Good afternoon and welcome to Lunchtime Coaching. My name is Kevin Britz, international leadership coach, trainer, and facilitator, and host to the Lunchtime series where we add value to people's lives, happening every day at 12 on ebizradio.com. Today we have the founder and principal of NorthStar Solutions and Services, all the way from the US, Meenakshi Iyer. How are you, Meenakshi? How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thank you, Kevin. Good afternoon to you, and wish you and your listeners and viewers a very happy new year.
Thank you. And to you, yes. Happy 2020.
Thank you. Yes.
Oh, I'm
You.
stuck in 2020. I'll say 20. Happy 2021.
Yes. Yeah, 2020 can do that to you. Yeah, it's been a case study in life. So,
I think so, right?
yes.
Meenakshi, so, you and I met online at one of the courses that we've attended. And,
Yes.
then sort of met up, had a really interesting conversation. And I wanted you to come on the show and tell everyone about who you are, what you do, and just give some people some really great insight. So I'm going to leave you to preface everything about you, your experience and all of that, and then sort of preface the topic of discussion.
Absolutely. Thank you again, Kevin. Thank you for having me on your show.
Sure.
Yeah, so as like Kevin said, I'm based in the US. I live in the state of Virginia on the East Coast of the United States. I moved to the US in 2008, so it's coming up to 13 years since I've been here. I'm born and raised in India, lived in different parts of India before moving here. I came here as a trailing spouse, and then took a little bit of time to get restarted in my own career. So my career is kind of split down the middle between my experience in India and the rest of it in the US.
Yeah.
So from a professional standpoint, I really consider myself to be an inclusive, collaborative, and T-shaped servant leader, primarily in the technology space. I've spent most of my career in the technology space, technology implementation, and I find that I really operate at my best at the intersection of people, process, and technology. As of August of 2019, after a 22-year corporate career, I ventured off on my own and started NorthStar Solutions and Services. That's my latest avatar, if you will. So I'm a solopreneur. And I'm also a lean, agile, and human-centered design practitioner, Kevin. And, I think my life experiences and my lived experience at work, all of that kind of really uh, inform what I do at work as well. Excuse me. And my career of more than 2 decades is really interdisciplinary, and it spans IT and business transformation, healthcare, HR training, and I'm also a trained English as a second language teacher. I did that in India, and then as a profession, and then I've been volunteering doing that in the US. Um, so at NorthStar, my primary role is that of a personal agility and collaborative leadership skills coach, and it's 100% virtual business, and it's a boutique, future of work oriented coaching, training, and consulting practice. And I specialize in partnering with mid-career, specifically mid-career IT and agile professionals globally, to really help them build and strengthen their what I refer to as future of work skills and behaviors. Those are really the ability to bring those agile practices from software and product development into how they work. So bring those practices to as a way of working, collaborative and inclusive ways of working,
Yeah.
and remote leadership. So that's 2020 has really highlighted that. And the other piece around is impactful change communication. That's the other piece that I think has also been highlighted in 2020. So I really work with the mid-career segment. And the reason for that really, Kevin, is that in my experience, I noticed that um, regardless of whether it was in India or in the US, I also did some consulting projects in Greece, I noticed that the mid-career segment is perhaps the least supported in terms of learning and development initiatives from within their organizations.
Yeah.
And especially in the technology space, right? So your skills, the individual skills, your technical skills, that's what really get you promoted. And like Marshall Goldsmith says, what's got you here won't get you there. And so you find these really talented professionals now suddenly becoming responsible for people. So that shift from managing tasks to really leading people, um, I noticed that there is a need. That's the gap I wanted to fill, really, with my coaching, training, and consulting practice. And the same goes for small and medium enterprises. That's my other in the consulting space. That's the focus that I have. Any particularly small and medium enterprises that are either looking to adopt technology or looking to adopt agile ways of working for their own business, really helping them that transition, their agile or digital or business process transformation.
Wow, that's amazing. I look at the information that you've shared with me. So, and one of the conversations that you're going to chat about today is self-leadership and how to do that with personalized agility. But I think that really lends itself to from coming from a different country, a different environment, a different culture, being a woman, being an Indian woman. How do you think? And it's not even part of, but it's one of the conversations we did. How do you think that's sort of influenced your stance on becoming the leader that you are today, and the coach and the mentor that you are? Because I can only imagine. I mean, you and I met when we went on the I Am Remarkable program.
Yes.
And we spoke about the biases that people experience, and you also experience that in your own capacity. And do you think that sort of knowing that now, being in the position you're in, it really gives you so much more insight on how to effectively influence change and why you've chosen this sort of niche path?
You couldn't have said it better, Kevin. My own experience has really not only shaped who I am today and what I do, but it's also really brought out that agility within myself, which is why I talk about personal agility quite a bit. And in the context of self-leadership, I believe that each of us, we are the most important person that we'll ever lead in our lives.
Yes.
So I always tell my clients that you are the most important person that you'll ever lead. And if you go back to ancient wisdom, be it the Bhagavad Gita or Lao Tzu's wisdom, you hear that mastering yourself is true strength. That's what Lao Tzu says, and the Bhagavad Gita says, first know thyself.
Yeah.
And so um, there's a lot of value in that. I think that as leaders, first of all, leadership has nothing to do with position of power or titles. And my experience was the exact opposite. I quite struggled I found myself in hierarchical systems, hierarchical organizations where the exact intersections that you just mentioned, me being a woman and from a certain demographic, from a certain part of the country within India. Even when I was in India, I've experienced that, and you and I have chatted about it before.
Yeah.
And then moving to the US, right? So I'm non-white, I'm an economic immigrant, I'm female, of a certain age. So all of those kind of, layer on top of each other, and those intersections, the identities create those intersections, which can put you in a position of privilege or make you discriminated, make you one of those people that it is discriminated against. And I've experienced all of it. I think that my education, my cross-cultural experience, my international experience, those have all put me in a position of privilege in the workplace, in the sense that I'm able to not only navigate certain situations a little bit better, but also have an edge over others who may not have had that exposure. On the other hand, so when I was at a certain level or certain position in the hierarchy in the company, I was one of the youngest people to be at that level, and that played against me. On top of the fact that I'm non-white female,
One,
also right? English is not my first language, so all of these things they really played a role. And to your point, that's really what inspired me to start off on my own as a solopreneur with NorthStar. I I wanted to be able to bring to the table and really support other professionals like myself in the technology space, in the IT and agile space, to really be able to shape their own careers. Um, just one other thing before we move on is that the reason why I focus so much on self leadership is the more I took charge of what I wanted to do and shape my career and my professional life, the more it worked for me. And I think that it also uh, uh, it I'm no longer the victim,
yeah.
right? So I'm not allowing people to treat me a certain way or do things a certain way, and I'm able to reverse that. Plus, the more attention I pay to self management, the more authentic and the more impactful I can show up in whichever space I'm in.
Yeah, and as you're speaking, being a woman of a different color, being a different culture, being in the US, in a whole different country, when you look at your resume and you look at everything you've done, it's strange that we still live in the world and we still carry such bias around when you see someone or when you hear them speak.
Yes.
And one of the things that's so profound when you say, uh, don't comment on someone who speaks a different language or has an accent. It really means that they can speak more than one language.
Absolutely.
When you're like, well, it's quite significant when you really just settle your brain around that. You kind of go, yeah, this it means that this person has more ability than you do, basically.
Right.
But I mean, speak to us about this. The topic that self leadership is so prevalent and it's so necessary, especially in really enhancing that middle management, that midsection of corporate today. But it also, just off the bat, personal agility that sort of lends itself to that. When you come to a space that you are, in NLP we call it the requisite of variety. The person who is most agile and really adaptive in the environment rules their system, right? So from that agile perspective and being able to almost manipulate your moment or your behavior in the moment that you're having really speaks to self-leadership and how leadership shows up. But give us that sort of breakdown on why these two areas for you and how are they working out, in how are you bringing them together?
Yeah, so like I said, you are the most important person that you'll ever lead. And what does that really mean? Self-management and self-leadership, self-management, the elements are really about self-awareness and that confidence, and
Yeah.
a large in large part there's also the self-promotion, right? So you look at you the self-awareness plays out in you knowing your strengths, your values, where is it that you can be most impactful, where is it that you need support. So being very honest and authentic with yourself to begin with, number one.
Yeah.
And then once you figure that out, paying attention to how you show up in the service of others. The other thing about, and then this is the other piece, right, for especially for first time managers and first time leaders, the shift suddenly becomes that what got you here is you being responsible for your own success.
Yeah.
And doing things that lend itself to that, right? But the moment you and that's where you're managing your tasks in a way that they lead you to success. The moment you become responsible for others, that whole thing shifts. You become responsible for the success of others, and uh, and the focus is more on what you can do to remove impediments
Yes.
for others, right?
Mm.
And so creating success for others is what makes you successful as a people leader.
Yeah.
And so that awareness around how are you managing yourself when you have to show up in the service of others, I think that's a very crucial element. Now,
Mm.
whether or not you have people reporting to you, um, being aware of what are you doing to contribute towards collective success.
Yeah.
And this leads me to think about collaboration over competition. And so as individual contributors, we tend to be focused on our swim lane, on our path. But if we really think about a collaborative network, then the whole system, the whole ecosystem is successful, not just one part of it.
Mm. Absolutely.
Right. So to me, self-leadership is, first of all, it's the focus on yourself and bringing the best out of yourself and showing up as your best version for others.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good place to be before you really start getting, having people report to you and have a team and things like that. And sorry, go ahead. Looks like you were going to say something.
And one of the things you also mentioned was self-promotion. Now, you and I, we've been on a program that really speaks about this. But don't you want to just talk about that as well? Because I think, your intro really speaks about who you are and the successes of what you do. And I think people really don't have a handle on it yet. And I don't think people know that self-promotion is a really important factor. I think we've all, so many of us, different cultures, different countries, different continents, have a very similar story of, well, if I tell people who I am, what I successfully do, then it comes across as arrogant or boasting. And we've learned that if it's factual, it's not boasting, right?
Yes,
I think just about the importance of that, because listening to a bit of your background and knowing that being the youngest and being a person that's really got an opinion and successful, and we tend to kind of want to shy away from it. And I really propose that all people who are especially in a corporate environment, especially wanting to get to a position where they want a promotion or they want that next step, part of that really needs to speak to, well, I want to tell people what I do, what I'm capable of doing, what I've done.
Absolutely. For me, it's been an evolution when it comes to self-promotion. So culturally, I was raised to not be seen, not be heard. So forget about talking about myself, right? So as a female from the south of India, from a certain community, those things are that's what you're raised with. And most of my career has been in companies that are Western in a way, like that have a Western way of working, and that have more individualistic mindsets, and especially definitely after the move to the US. So for me, it's been the understanding of self-promotion, and for me to become comfortable with talking about myself has been a long journey, from my career in India to the move to the US, and then struggling to find my foothold here, to now being a solopreneur. So I still remember when I was talking to my mom, and I just started NorthStar, and I was chatting with her. In fact, uh, uh, a sort of a sentimental tidbit here is that I registered my business on my mom's birthday, because to me it's a tribute to her for how she raised me. And And then the interesting part was when I was chatting with her, she said, how are you going to do this? I mean, something about, I was telling her about the marketing elements in it and, constantly having to have that presence and be consistent with it and show people what you can do and how you bring value. And she said, that means you've got to talk about yourself an awful lot. I said,
Yes.
yes, because it's just me. It's a solo venture. So we laughed about it, but then the point was that she was feeling uncomfortable on my behalf, and she was feeling uncomfortable and almost disapproving that this is what I have to do now on a regular basis. So that's been my evolution around self-promotion. But a lot
Yeah.
of my coaching clients that I work with, this is one of the topics that we talk about, especially when it's coming time to closer to their performance reviews or if they're looking for that next role. What I find specific around the IT and the agile community is that the focus is so much on the technical skills and the hard skills that once you get to a point where you're looking for additional and expanded responsibilities and managerial responsibilities and being part of strategy and business and other functional elements, a lot of these otherwise brilliant folk really struggle with making that shift and that switch.
Yeah.
And suddenly, organizations seem to expect them to know how to do this, you know?
Yeah.
And all along, the focus has been on building up their technical skills.
Yeah.
So a few things that tips, if you will, that I share with my coaching clients is that, and I found this to be true, that women struggle with this more than men do.
Yeah.
Uh, but that's also cultural. There's also this cultural element. I've had male team members who struggled with really talking about what they've done and their individual accomplishment in that teamwork. They struggle with it, and there I've noticed it's largely due to language. So if they find themselves amongst native English speakers, then they kind of shy away
Yeah.
from talking about themselves. So it's again the intersectional element. So it's not always gender, it's also language, it's also culture. Um, and certain cultures, being in South Africa, I'm sure you're familiar with coming from Africa, the concept of being a collectivist culture versus an individualistic culture, right? So India is very similar to that as well. So and because it's a collectivist culture, there's so much respect for hierarchy.
Yeah.
So if your boss and your boss's boss is all present there, you are even doesn't matter what gender, you're going to shy away from talking about yourself. Um, so one of the ways to overcome this is absolutely what you shared, and that was one of my biggest learnings from the I Am Remarkable workshops. Is if it's true, then it's not bragging, and I think that's one, and I think that something that I started doing and that helped me a lot is just maintaining a running log of things that I did well and what I learned from it and what happened. Just an Excel spreadsheet. I found that to be useful during my performance review, especially because most organizations that I worked with had these annual performance reviews. So it's very hard for you to remember everything, all the good stuff that you've done.
Yeah.
Um, and the other thing is also being open to feedback. Doesn't
Mm.
matter what level you're at. And that all, to me, goes back to how do you manage yourself? How do you show up? So self-leadership. So cultivating some of these habits, even long before you become responsible as a people leader, I think really works out well. When you ask for feedback, also uh, putting the other person whom you're asking for feedback at ease by saying, look, I need to know where I need to improve. What should I be doing differently? What can I do better? And here, uh, and this is where I combine the agile practices. So one of the ways of doing what we call as retrospectives in a Scrum environment is one of the things you do is start, stop, continue, and that's one of my favorite retrospective tools. So
Yeah.
tell me one thing that I should start, stop, and continue doing. And when you get specific questions, I mean, if you say, hey, do you have any feedback? If you do a yes no question, most people are going to say, no, everything was great. But if you take the time to be very specific about what you're looking for, then people know that you are intentional about that conversation.
Absolutely, yeah. And also then, as you say, when you preface it that way, then the person also comes from their positioning of the feedback also comes from, well, I think you did that really well. I don't think you should do that. And this is something you should definitely do more often because, so when you preface it like that around feedback, it also gives the person giving the feedback so much, it almost alleviates a bit of pressure for them to kind of go, no,
Absolutely.
open to your feedback. So
Yeah, yeah.
one of the
And
things you mentioned, sorry, yes.
no, I just want to tie it back to the self-promotion piece. So, keeping a log of things that you've done well, and then using this kind of feedback, things that you should continue doing. Those are things that you're doing well. So those can all go into your done well log in a way. And the second thing is really, first of all, the second piece is also being focused on continuous improvement and being invested in continuous learning and improvement.
Mm.
And adding that to, so one of the pieces that you can talk about in self-promotion is that I am a lifelong learner. And people would have seen evidence of that when you say that. And so
Yeah,
that again goes back to if it's true, then it's not bragging.
yes,
And the third thing is to, when you talk about your accomplishments, focus on the impact you created, not about what you did.
yes,
So it's not about the process, it's about the impact and the value that you created. So
yeah.
if you focus on that, then you're taking the attention off of you a little bit because you're talking about the impact that you created.
Mm.
And to me, that's valuable as well. So anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, one of the things that you mentioned is the future of work in your
Mhm.
introduction. How does self-leadership and personal agility fit into that context? Explain that to us.
Yeah, so a little bit of history there. The future of work as a term was coined by the founding executive of the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab, and this was back in 2016. So, for those of you who are not aware, the World Economic Forum does an annual summit. It used to be at Davos, and there's mixed feelings about it. It can come across as being very elitist. It is, in fact, and they've kind of changed with times. And the 2021 summit is going to be online, so it really becomes inclusive. So COVID caused that. Uh,
Yes.
and they are going to do their in-person summit in May in Singapore. Usually it happens in January at Davos. It's always at Davos.
Yeah.
So it can be pretty elitist. However, there's a lot of good work that comes out of the World Economic Forum. So anyway, the future of work was a term that came from there, which really speaks to the fourth industrial revolution that we're already in, where our digital and our physical worlds they blend. All the lines are blurred. We talk about the Internet of Things, right?
Yeah.
And so the what does that mean, and why am I focusing on it? One is when I read about this, so I'd been following the World Economic Forum summits for a few years, and 2019, 2020, I got the opportunity to really because I was the boss of my own time, so I got that additional time to spend, and I actually did a global conference in May of 2020 titled the 4IR, the Fourth Industrial Revolution and the Future of Work. So I had folks from within my network speak about different things pertaining to the future of work. So, in my perspective, it's really about um, the ways of working have turned around on their head, if you will. And when I started out, I used to think it's primarily in the knowledge workspace or the knowledge economy. But if you look at it, it's not really so. It affects manufacturing, it affects agriculture, oil and gas. You look at any industry, it's really because technology has seeped into everything that we do.
Yeah.
But for the purposes of my work at NorthStar and this conversation, I'm really focusing on a knowledge work economy. So folks involved in the IT space, technology space, product development, software development space. One of the key things I've noticed is that what future work really means for this space is um, you're really the focus or the way to get work done is by collaboration. And it's no longer that top-down hierarchical approach of getting work done.
Yeah.
So much so that there's this whole new field called organizational network analytics.
Yeah.
So right, it really looks at, and it again, you use technology, you use AI and ML in the back end to study. For example, it can study your emails from within your email system to say who talks to who the most, where are the power circles, where are the circles of influence, and things like that.
Wow.
So getting work done is yes, it's always been about who you know, but it's becoming even more important now, and not from a power or hierarchy sense. It's about who has the skill and who can get it done um, in an agile manner and still, do the best possible work given with what we have, right? So there's a shift in that. So work is getting done through collaboration, and now, and it's been more magnified with the pandemic. With a lot of work from home, work at home. Now it's almost like work from anywhere. So you have this whole new generation of digital nomads that can work from anywhere.
Yeah.
So that has opened up a whole new way of working, where companies, even when those job postings tell you can be based anywhere as long as you can work these hours.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yes.
you are no longer going to see that person in the office. You're no longer going to have those physical water cooler chats. You're no longer be able to control anyone's behavior because you're no longer in a work and a place, right? Work is no longer a place. It's an activity that you do. It's not a place that you go. So those are some of the changes that I'm seeing in terms of future work, and that's why I spend some time on that and focus my business on that.
And I think, to that point, if we just look at the last year, we've literally been flung into a remote working environment.
Yep.
And we sort of have to just get on board and adapt with that. But I think, I've recently had a discussion with someone mentioned what corporates really need to also embrace about remote working is the affording people the opportunity to manage their own time.
Yep.
And also be outcome-based and not input-based.
Yep.
And I think that speaks to so much and so many people who are digital nomads and people working remotely. When do you want it done? What is the cutoff date for this project? Or, and then let me do it when I'm doing it. So people don't want to sit in the traffic. People don't want to get up earlier. But they know they have to get this job done. They know they have to do it. And I think it's really forcing a lot of corporates in the world today to really re-look at themselves and re-strategize on how they're going to apply the future of work and how that's sort of going to affect the environment. But one of the questions is back to agility.
Mm-hmm.
Is personal agility something that can be learned?
I definitely believe so. I strongly believe in growth mindset. So Professor or Dr. Carol Dweck's work on that. And one of our TED Talks, the title of the talk is The Power of Yet. The context there was the school system and working with kids and all of that. But the learning that I took away from that is anything that if I, instead of just saying I can't do this, if I just add the word yet to that, it just reframes it. And it puts me in the driver's seat. It opens up possibilities. So I believe that anything that's there can be learned. Now, The difference will be how well can you do it. Now, some people, but doesn't mean that I can't do it at all. So, for example, when I started off my business, one of the things was I really, because I was going to invest my savings in starting it up, I wanted to be really keep my expenses low as possible, obviously.
Yeah.
So and I wanted to be a virtual business, which meant I had to have a website and a very well curated online presence and things like that. And I had no clue where to start. I'd never done any of this. So I sat
Yes.
for 2 months saying, I don't know how to build a website. I can't build a website. And then one fine day, I finally said, you know what? I'm just going to give it a shot because I don't have the money to hire someone to do this for me.
Yeah.
So whatever the motivation, I got myself there. And once I got myself there, I was like, okay, I can do this. And I remembered listening to Professor Dweck's TED Talk then. So given that preamble, I definitely believe that personal agility is something that can be learned because the key um, constructs are really so closely tied to how you show up. So having that growth mindset again is a big part of personal agility because there is, we tend to have these, not only do we have these narratives about ourselves, the stories we tell about ourselves to ourselves, we
Yeah.
attach such a degree of finality to it, right?
Yes.
Like I used to say, I can't build a website. I don't know how to build a website.
Yeah.
And that
It
was
just-
like the fact, right? So to me, the first step towards personal agility is really adopting and then really practicing the power of yet, just by simply adding the word yet to whatever negative
what is
statement you're
it?
making about
Yeah.
yourself, in terms of ability.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's so true, and it so speaks to none of us. If you told us at January 2020 that we would be in this position and working remotely and having online everything and conversations and business, and nobody would have gone like, no, it's not possible. We can't do that. And I
Right.
remember we had one of our universities who within a couple of weeks took the entire curriculum and put it online.
Mm.
And yet before that, it wasn't even an option. The university was like, no, that's, you have to go to class, you have to be here. And within a couple of weeks, they put the entire curriculum. And I was like, wow, it just goes to show, agility, even in that context, having
Yeah.
to say, well, how do we do this? It's possible. I mean, I look at my daughter's schooling.
Hmm.
She'd never been online. She'd never used MS, what do you call it? The MS Teams.
Teams.
And within a week, within 2 weeks, we had her online. We had her up and running, and she was at school with her teachers. It's so yeah. It's something that's so remarkable. Meenakshi, you and I could have this conversation, I think, for quite a while, right? But if we had to do summary, if you
Hmm.
could sort of summarize and share some takeaways with the audience today, please will you give us some to sort of really consider, facing 2021.
Absolutely, Kevin. So first, in terms of self-leadership, I would say there's three main components to think about. One is self-awareness. So knowing yourself, what are your values, what are your strengths, what makes you tick, and what drives you nuts. Knowing all of that is important.
Yeah.
Um, and practicing self-care in the sense that, and this is something I've missed mentioning earlier, but to me that's a very important aspect. And when I say self-care, talking about who do you spend your most time with, right? They say you are the average of the 5 people that you spend your most time with. So who are your 5 people that you spend your most time with? It
Yeah.
could be online, it could be following them, whatever it is, right? So self-care really is how are you taking care of yourself? What you feed is what grows. So what are you feeding?
Yes.
Right. And the third thing is self-promotion. We talked about that. So if it's true, it's not bragging, focusing on creating value, creating impact. So to me, that's in a nutshell is self-leadership.
Yeah.
And tying it to personal agility, it's about practicing the values of respect, empathy, focus, commitment, and courage, which are also, Scrum, the 5 top Scrum values. So, how can you, I have like 5 tips that you can practice. It's a combination of Scrum and Kanban, if you will, from the software development world. Number one, and I'm using a little bit of the food analogy here. So imagine if you're at a buffet. So visualize your entire plate, and that's your goals, your work, your personal goals, all of it, and then figure out, uh, you know, what you want to focus on and what's driving those needs, right? So chew on one portion at a time on that plate. The key
Yeah, you
is
can't
to
plate, right? You can't just throw
yeah.
just one portion at a time is good. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And it's important to manage your attention. We all focus on time management and we have lovely blocked out calendars. But what are we really doing? So when you commit to doing something, make sure you're doing just that, because that's why you've blocked off time to do that. So if you don't respect yourself and your time, nobody else will.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, time is the only irreplaceable resource in the world.
Yeah.
And you can't manage your time well if you don't manage your attention, because your energy goes where your attention goes, right?
Yeah.
So manage your attention, not just your time. The fourth thing, really the crux of agility, is controlling the blast radius. In a sense, if you're trying out something, make sure that you it's a sample size that you can control. So
Yeah.
if it's a new process, then figuring out dependencies, etc., beforehand and saying, okay, this particular team is the smallest unit that I can try out this new thing with. So
Yeah.
controlling blast radius so that you have the opportunity to inspect and adapt. And that's your feedback loop of learning, keeping that
Yeah.
open. And the last point is retrospection. So look back to look ahead. And again, borrowing from Marshall Goldsmith's concept of feed forward. So I call it a feed forward retrospective. A lot of times we, in the context of how we show up, we try something once and it doesn't work. It's very easy to give up, or it's very easy to spend too much time wallowing in what happened and what I could have done this and I didn't do this, or I should have done that, and all of that, right? A friend of mine gave me this analogy. I think it's like chainmail, it's been passed down. That there is a reason why when you're driving a car, your windshield is bigger than your rear view mirror. But you cannot drive without your rear view. I mean, people do, but you technically can't.
Yeah. Sure.
So that's the concept of looking back to look forward. So your rear view mirror it allows you to do that retrospective, but the key is that you need to move forward, and that's why you have this big of a windshield.
Yeah.
So spend enough time in retrospective to learn from it, but not so long that you forget where you're going.
Yeah. Or you change direction. Yeah.
Yes, yes,
You're like, oh well, I'm just going backwards.
yes, absolutely. So those are my 5 things. Visualize your entire plate, chew one portion at a time, manage your attention, not just your time, control the blast radius, inspect and adapt, and last, look back to look ahead, do feed forward perspectives.
And then just the last 2 key operating principles. There's something you shared as well with me, and I just want you to touch on those because those are really cool, and talk to us about that.
Absolutely. So for me, it goes back to the concept of continuous learning and agility. It's always progress over perfection.
Yeah.
As long as you have taken that one additional step towards your goal today, that's good, because you're oriented correctly. You're allowing yourself to learn. There's a lot of power in pausing. We tend to just go because our cultures and our work environments reward action.
Yeah.
So it's equally important to pause and equally important to acknowledge progress, not just achieving a goal, not just perfection, because there is no such thing as perfection.
Yeah.
So as long as you're progressing. So that's one important thing, progress over perfection. The second thing is direction is as important as speed.
Yeah.
How are you oriented? Are you oriented in a way that you're going to bring value to yourself, to your team, to your organization, or are you just in such a hurry that you miss the entire journey? Then you miss opportunities for learning, right? And then you miss opportunities for inspect and adapt. You miss all those things. So to me, these two are extremely important: progress over perfection, and focusing on direction, not just speed.
Absolutely. And I think, they're almost life lessons. I think, you get to, and you can really apply that within your relationship. You can apply that within your work environment. You can apply that within parenting,
Absolutely.
Stop trying to be perfect, just have progress.
Yeah.
And, and remember the learnings along the way, because, as you fail, as you get up and fail fast and fail forward, you kind of go, oh yes, I'm failing, but I'm learning in that process, and I get up and do it again. And it's so significant and so essential for who we're becoming in the world today, right?
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
actually, thank you. There was such a fantastic conversation, and you have such wonderful insight. I really, really love that. If anybody wants to get hold of you, if they want to chat to you, if they want to hit you up online, what is the best place for them to go? If you can share that with us, and then we obviously all of that's going to be shared in the description boxes below, and people can hear more about who you are and what you do.
Absolutely. I'm very active on LinkedIn. That's my platform of choice. So please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. NorthStar Solutions and Services also has a LinkedIn page, which is very active as well. So I would invite people to follow that. I also have a very active YouTube channel where I put out micro learning sessions. I've done a few conversation series so far. One was focused on the future of work and the multi-generational workforce that I did with a father-daughter duo. And in December, I did a conversation series with women leaders and entrepreneurs to look at, it was like a study on grit, because that's what got us through 2020. So I would invite people to subscribe to my YouTube channel, again, NorthStar Solutions and Services, and of course the website, northstaratwork.com. I'm a little bit less active on Twitter and Facebook as well, but I do have a presence. And yeah, you can send me an email or find me on LinkedIn. And I really want to thank you for this opportunity, Kevin. I really enjoyed chatting with you. And if I may, I just wanted to. It occurred to me this morning when I was thinking about our conversation. This quote from Rumi, the 13th century Persian poet and Sufi saint.
Yeah.
He said, "Yesterday I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today I'm wise, so I'm changing myself."
Fantastic. I love that.
Yeah. So to me, it just tied back to the whole concept of self-leadership and personal agility. So I just wanted to close with that.
Yeah, thank you. That was fantastic. Meenakshi, Iyer, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for the energy. Thank you for the insights. I absolutely love it. Guys, if you want to find out more, check out the links below. You can also find her on all the social medias. And yeah, I'll chat to you soon.
Yes, thank you very much, Kevin, and thank you, everyone.